Once our mortality has been acknowledged, fantasies of eternal life dismissed. Once the universe and life within it is realized to be without any objective purpose external to the phenomena of us, it becomes difficult, if not impossible, to take seriously many of the lines drawn, standards set, systems developed, rules made, and games played by other humans, dead and living. In context of the extreme likelihood that every thought, every perception, every moment that we will ever experience are finite things, many subsequent realizations become inevitable. Perhaps most of all, and the topic of this video, contemplating mortality highlights the absurdity of that all-encompassing framework of deciding who gets what, who lives and who dies. Money. Each second lived is 1 second less. Each thought had is 1 thought less, before an eternal dark. This is not just another day of the week. This is the first and last time that you will ever experience this specific moment. And this is true for every moment you will ever live. Those who live in denial of their mortality never have to think of the fact that the world that we build for ourselves and for each other is the world that we are to spend our entire finite sentience within. The fact that the people who made your clothes, who grew your coffee and mined the minerals for your computers, these lives are all that these people get. The sum of their experienced moments, their sufferings and their struggles, were and are the sum of their lives, their one and only chance at being, stolen by a game thoroughly established long before they ever even formed. We construct an entertaining, surreal mindscape, wherein much of the concept of value has become severely warped to a crude numerical reduction. Our methods of resource management and distribution strongly reflect our lacking awareness or acceptance of our mortality, our unwillingness to contend with or even acknowledge the reality of death. In presupposing and clinging to the idea of an eternal life, people are a lot more likely to ignore and excuse the problems of the here and now. Just as is true of religion, what we have constructed is a fantasy so all-encompassing that it serves as a viable distraction from the burdensome responsibility of contemplating reality honestly. It creates novel problems detached from the objective circumstances of our situation, then claims to provide the solutions, providing solutions that aren't solutions to problems that aren't problems, serving the same destructive and distracting role as religion in ensuring that the actual problems we collectively face cannot be addressed because their natures are perpetually misrepresented and misunderstood. As is true of religion, in many circles, pointing out the elephant in the room has become a type of taboo heresy, complete with a whole arsenal of established rationalizations and rhetoric deployed to dismiss and misrepresent criticism. And, like religion, it is one of the main reasons primary education will likely always suck. Learning is directly antithetical to two of our main unspoken cultural goals: the maintaining and perpetuation of treasured delusions, and the production of citizens who are obedient workers and eager consumers. The prospect of learning, of gaining awareness of reality and the various phenomena therein, is intentionally made boring to perpetuate the stagnation of the population's intellectual potential. In such a barren intellectual wasteland, reasonable, reflective people are hard to come by. Harder still is it to find those of holistically honest intellects. Often you'll see people who understand capitalism is broken, yet don't comprehend the folly of religious and pseudoscientific ways of thinking. While other times, people are quite aware of the fallacy game that maintains superstitious thought forms, while the literal points game of capitalism somehow survives within their minds as an acceptable and good means by which to manage resources. People often fail to think through that which they have grown to accept as being normal, the things that have been the most constant for them for the longest. In fact, the awe of existence itself, the absurdity of what it is to be, is more often than not contained within this normalization blind spot. I find this aspect of our minds most interesting to think of on the level of neurology and evolutionary psychology. After all, there are infinite things to think about and finite thoughts that can be performed by a brain in each instant, each thought with a direct metabolic cost. It would make sense for us to have evolved to pay the least mind to the things that seem to be the most consistent and stable. Yet, as with most of our biases, a psychological mannerism that helped our ancestors survive their conditions hinders our attempts to thrive in ours. Treating money as a valid foundation for the concept of value is as absurd and off the mark as treating gods as a valid foundation for the concept of morality. Problems of good and bad become spoken of and thought of through the God lens. Subsequently, problems of resource management and distribution become spoken and thought of through the money lens. Both cases of reduction skew the concepts foundationally, such that they are no longer resonant with reality. In the last major correlation between religion and capitalism that I will mention, they both suggest us all, on some level, to be implicitly unworthy. However, while religion merely denies access to a fictional eternal hereafter, capitalism serves to ensure that those who lose the lottery of birth are perpetually denied a stable here and now. Punishing children for the actions of their parents or ancestors by imposing and enforcing fictional limitations on people based on the circumstances of their birth. Money gives people the means by which to tangibly and predictably influence the opinions, beliefs, and values of others, based entirely on how many points they've managed to acquire, by whatever means they've managed to acquire them. This is so much the case that many of us find ourselves in a culture wherein what ideas spread is purely a matter of those images and phrases which reliably engage the basemost impulses of the most people. Because grabbing attention is all that matters. Because the sale is all that matters. So the minds of entire cultures are shaped by this blade. Vanity, drama, sensationalism, fear-mongering, in allowing our information technologies to be abused as a means by which the values of the culture may be manipulated. That is exactly what they have almost exclusively become. Abused technologies, reduced to tools in the steady production of distracted, complacent consumers. Fueling the worst in us by profiting off of the amplification of our basemost impulses. All the while, profound, informative, and substantial discoveries go unnoticed by all but a few. In this gamified pseudo-world, we've robbed ourselves and each other of most of the time we are able to spend actually living. Learning, experiencing, creating, traveling, growing, reflecting. Generally enjoying existence before the void. If you are lucky enough to be in the consumer class, these things are instead designated to the category of leisure or vacation, or if you live long enough to earn your freedom, retirement. The bulk of a person's life in the quote-unquote developed world is expected to consist of work, whereas in the lives of those in the nations whose backs we stand on, this expectation is an outright demand. Work or die. The amount of food that we can harvest and the things that we can build has skyrocketed in the last 100 years. Yet instead of the hours worked decreasing as quality of life increases, we have come up with new ways of convincing ourselves why things can't be better. In the lands of the exploiters and the exploited but complacent consumers, we stagnate and postpone the progress and implementation of automation to keep around those jobs that keep the masses distracted and drained. We've built a world around the idea that in order to be worthy of life, one must perform some repetitive task or another, independent of interest in the task, what doing the task brings into the world, or what ideas and values the task amplifies and promotes. Usually, someone else gets more out of our time than we do. We generate more wealth than we receive. A situation we accept only because it hides neatly within the aforementioned blind spot of normal. We accept things as they are because they've been this way for as long as we can remember. As the benefits of automating work become more and more obvious, the flaws in reducing the value of life to a game will become more dramatically and violently evident. The result of widespread automation in the world as it is now would lead to mass unemployment, starvation, poverty, and as tends to follow, death. Rather than freeing the species, it would lead to most of us being cast aside like the objects we have long been seen and treated as. We are building the rich a castle, the gates of which will be closed to us. You think money is a selective pressure now? Wait until we're no longer needed for the rich to maintain control. Wait until we have cracked senescence and the air slowly becomes less breathable worldwide. You think you'll be let into the self-sustaining bunkers and biodomes, even if your life's labor directly enabled them to be built and developed? You think you'll be able to afford to be saved from the decay of aging? As the competence of our machines increases, and as the need for human labor of mind and body decreases, we could be freeing ourselves and each other. Yet what is far more likely is that we are heading for a world wherein most people are simply left behind. These localized subjectivities are finite in nature. We are finite. In absence of the contextualizing weight of this understanding, we have convinced ourselves and each other that we have to earn the right to be alive. Unless this falsehood is reasoned through, it will continue to act as a profound limitation to our collective and individual potential. Capitalism leads to the advancement of technology, but so does war. War accelerates technological development via the pitting of people against one another in a life or death struggle to compete or die. Capitalism does so also, in much the same way. Work or starve. Compete in a landscape wherein greed and manipulation thrive, and be willing to cast aside adherence to ethical values, or be outpaced by those who are. Just because these two situations both lead to the outcome of furthering technological capacity, by no means implies that they are the only, or even the best, paths to attaining that goal. In war, advancement is incidental to the arms race of kill or be killed. Under capitalism, advancement is incidental to the premise of find some way to earn points or die. You can make people work at gunpoint. You can make people work by withholding their food, clothing, medicine, or shelter if they don't. The point remains that the advancement is incidental, and in large part outweighed and overshadowed by the true core of each idea, the violent life or death implications of not playing. We are trained, kept afraid, tired, and drained, intellectually malnourished and complacently distracted, lied to so often that our capacity to distinguish truth from fiction is all but non-existent. In society as it is, everyone has a number. Sustaining this number, this gross oversimplification of value, has long become comparable to sustaining oneself. As I stated earlier, money has long been a selective pressure for our species, one as important to whether or not you live or die as food or rest, all the while superseding these, as without the maintaining of this number, you get no food and you get no rest. Yet unlike these fundamental aspects of our objective biological natures, this burden is one that is entirely self-imposed, existing in increasingly sharper contrast to anything close to that which could be considered our collective goals. To have well-constructed and maintained methods of producing food and treating water. To have adequate and comfortable shelter from the elements. To be safe from harm, external and internal, having access to medicine and medical procedure as needed when needed. To be granted access to technologies invented that substantially improve quality of life. To have the means to learn about the world, in actuality, through studying the patient and curious observation and experiments performed throughout time. To feel secure enough in one's safety to create, and to have the time and the chance to learn what it even is one wants to create. To build, develop, and advance technologies. To live free, without the constant and tangible artificial threat of poverty and death. Money has a more profound impact on who lives and who dies, who pointlessly suffers to scrape by, and who is able to flourish effortlessly, than any other single factor. The idea of money corrupts every facet of being, in that it serves to focus the efforts and energy of the population not on end goals of collective advancement of quality of life, sustainability, longevity, knowledge, and well-being, but on the endlessly shallow, petty, and short-sighted pursuit of the dollar. Trading our time and thoughts to one another in exchange for tokens, which we are then allotted the ability to buy life-sustaining food and shelter with, so we have more time to prolong our existence to earn some more tokens. Each day, the divide grows between those of us with consistent access to improving, cheapening resources and technologies, and those of us who, in large, produce them. We have the technology, the resources, and the space to clothe, house, feed, and educate every person on the earth, and many more. As time goes on, this statement becomes more and more apparent, and the rationalizations for why we aren't doing this more apathetic and egregious. If money continues to be the means by which societies manage the distribution of resources and determine our individual and collective quality of life, we will remain in this state of stagnation, blind to each other's problems, as well as the problems we collectively face. Money divides us, distracts us, makes us smaller. Curiosity, love of learning, of building, passion for discovery or accomplishment, the satisfaction of creation, of invention, of solving problems, improving and optimizing our technologies, attaining self-sufficiency, the joys of teaching, the camaraderie of helping others to improve their circumstances. These aspects of humanity continue to exist independent of capitalism, and are indeed far more hindered by it than aided.